Okay, firstly, I'd like to thank the board for inviting me to come do a presentation, and I'm going to say a disclaimer right at the front that I'll try to answer any questions you have, but obviously I started at NOVA just last September, so if I can't answer your questions, I'll take them back and make sure I get an answer for you. So this is a map of what Joffre looks like today. If you're not familiar, we're out about 13 kilometers east of Red Deer, off Highway 11 and west of 815, just north of the Red Deer River, and then that's in Lacombe County. And we're one of the largest ethylene polyethylene complexes in North America. We have 3 ethylene plants. The first one, E1, was built probably about 1979, followed by PE1 and E2, and in the J2000 era, E3 and PE2 were constructed. If you know a little bit about your chemistry back from high school, what we do is we pipeline in ethane, which is a C2H6, and we make ethylene, which is a C2H4. So everything that we do basically is to get that double bond in that ethylene. And then to be value added, we do have 2 polyethylene plants, PE1 and PE2, where we make longer chain hydrocarbons in polyethylene. And our PE1 plant is a gas phase technology. Our PE2 plant is a solution phase technology. We also have INEOS right next to us, and they make linear alpha olefins, and they take some of our ethylene and make some products, and we also take some of their products and use it in our polyethylene production. We have a cogeneration facility which provides electricity and steam, so we generate steam from natural gas and use that for turbines to make electricity, and then we use that steam within our processes. We also have hydrogen off-gas, so to get that double bond, you lose a couple hydrogens, so that hydrogen we collect and we use right now to Agrium in the Northeast takes that product from us. So here's an aerial of our site area. We own about 5 sections of land, which is about 3,300 acres. But the area zoned, which is just that developed area there, is less than 900 acres. Our remaining area is largely buffer zone, mostly in agricultural usage. And land use is an important community issue, and planning principles minimize impacts. So all those lands around us, we do have leaseholders that either farm them or they put their cattle out there and graze those lands. Right, so we operate under one comprehensive approval with Alberta Environment and Sustainable Resource Development for our whole facility, and it's for the construction, operation, and reclamation of the Joffre chemical, petrochemical manufacturing plant and power plant. And that also includes all our wastewater type treatment, any of our water use. Now our Water Act licensing, I'll talk about separately, is a different license, and we also operate a potable water treatment plant, which falls under a different license. And currently with our proposed expansion, we're looking to amend that approval to add that extra production capacity. And the other types of approvals that we would need is with Lacombe County, we'd have to have a development permit, which we've already presented to them, and we're just waiting for the appeal process with that. So onto that, I'll talk a little bit about the proposed expansion. All right, so our PE1 expansion, so that was in the southwest corner, is our PE1 plant. And we're adding a world-scale polyethylene reactor. So currently we have 2 identical production trains, or polyethylene reactors in PE1, and the expansion is to add a 3rd train to produce polyethylene. While R3 represents a significant investment, it is categorized as a modest derivative expansion, and it would increase our capacity for polyethylene on site by about 40%. And the reason for the expansion is we've acquired some additional contracts for getting ethane into the site, and we're able to make more ethylene, which in turn will be able to make more polyethylene in the future. And we do continue to seek stakeholder input in keeping with our ongoing communications, consultation programs, and responsible care. So if you have any comments that you would like to bring forward to me later, I'm happy to hear them. So this just shows where that expansion is going to be in that southwest corner. It's already in the developed footprint of our site. The yellow there is a west access road that we will build for use during construction, and likely will be kept there, but will not be a regular access point once construction is finished. But it'll help divert some of the traffic that we normally see coming into the site. Okay, next. So as part of the expansion, we did do some environmental studies. We did do an air dispersion model, and we did do a water quality study of our discharge into the river. And this is just a quick summary, and I will spend more time on water after this slide. The expansion is a small change to our industrial footprint. We've used best available technology in the design to mitigate potential effects. And generally, there are small increases in air emissions and water emissions, which result in no adverse effects outside of our land boundary or in the river. And all expansion operations will be included in our existing site environmental monitoring programs, which fall under our approval. Okay, and I'm going to talk a little bit about responsible care, so if you can go to the next slide, please. So responsible care was established in 1985 by the Canadian Chemical Producers Association, which is now called the Chemical Industry Association. And if you recall, probably most of you are familiar with the Bhopal incident. I think that was probably in the 80s. And responsible care was generally created after that incident occurred. And so it addresses public concerns about the manufacture, distribution, and use of chemicals. Responsible care ethic embraces by chemical industry associations in more than 40 countries, and it promotes continuous improvement in the industry's environmental health and safety performance. Next slide. So Nova Chemicals is a long-standing member of the Chemical Industry Association of Canada, and we had our first verification in 1997 to confirm continuous improvement in the implementation of responsible care ethic. It's committed to the principles reflecting responsible care ethic and spirit. The goals include strong commitment to efficient use of raw materials, minimizing environmental impact. So it's operating in accordance with ethical laws and regulations and to the higher either of NOVA or local health, safety, and environmental standards. As a result, we do have a comprehensive environmental management system on the site which incorporates responsible care principles and those of regulatory standards. Okay. So as part of responsible care, we voluntarily report to a National Emissions Reduction Master Plan, which is put together annually by the Chemical Industry Association of Canada. And it does focus a lot on air emissions and some metal emissions. So as a proactive response to concerns around water quality and quantity, the Chemical Industry Association of Canada has developed a policy regarding water as well as a responsible care performance measure. And recently they've recommended that they begin water use reporting in this year. One of the other things around water that is represented by the Chemical Industry Association of Canada for NOVA is sector-specific conservation, efficiency, and productivity water plans that they've recently presented to Alberta Water Council, and hopefully we'll have a final report of those further later in the year, and we'll go on as that will be our baseline to continue to measure where our conservation in that industry is going and what we're able to achieve. Another part of responsible care is our comprehensive community outreach program, and in that includes our Joffre Community Advisory Panel, which the community chooses who they wish in their community sit on that panel, and they meet about quarterly to discuss issues around the site. We do have a community newsletter called Sightline, which is 3 times a year, and one of those is an environmental edition, which I think is on your tables if you're interested in looking at it. We do hold 2 open houses a year, usually out at Satinwood School, and we have a responsive information and complaint process, and we're also very involved in the community and with sponsorships. And our vision is to be a neighbor of choice in the communities in which we operate and do business. And I just threw in some photos here of some of the local events that we've been involved with. Recently on June 6th for Clean Air Day, we participated in the free vehicle emissions testing clinic and with our partners PAMS, Alberta Environment, the City of Red Deer, and Parkland Mall. We tested about 80 local vehicles and had about a 97% pass rate, which was great. Okay, the next one. We've also participated in the Red Deer River cleanup on June 3rd, and we sent volunteers and also sponsored a barbecue. And I think they came up with about 1,600 pounds of garbage was collected that day. And the last one is we do some tree planting in the city. On this day out in Glendale, they planted 430 trees. And these are annual events that we like to participate in every year. Next one. So our Joffre Site environmental programs, and I could talk at length at all the different programs, but I'm going to focus on water, so I'll just briefly mention our other programs. We do have our quality programs, and that includes both annual stack emission testing, continuous monitoring, ambient air testing. We have 4 stations that surround our site that we continuously monitor ambient air, and we have a leak detection and repair program that looks for leaks within our valves, pumps, compressors, and that sort of thing, and that's an annual program as well. We have an environmental noise program, which we maintain a site noise model, and with the expansion, we have identified the equipment that would cause noise and built that into the model and built the mitigation measures that would be required to mitigate noise. We do a annual community noise monitoring event that's usually over a couple days, sometime in the summer months. And we also have 4 continuous monitors that surround our site for noise monitoring. So we try to reduce the impact of noise on our community. We have water and effluent management programs, which I'll talk about in more detail later. We have waste minimization programs. We have soil and groundwater management programs, conservation, reclamation, wildlife management. And so our staff, right now, we have 8 full-time equivalent environmental specialists on site that assist with managing all these things. My specific programs, I look after our noise modeling, as well as I'm a regulatory specialist, so I look after any applications to regulatory organizations. And that's kind of where I fit into the whole model. So had to learn a lot very quickly, but we do have specialists that dig deeper into all these different types of programs. Some of the industrial environmental synergies we have on site is with cogeneration. It's an energy efficient way to produce power that we use on site and to produce our steam needs, which lowers our emissions. We have our hydrogen off gas facility, which is a potential waste stream, but we sell as a product. We have ethane feed carbon dioxide. So when our ethane comes in, it is contaminated with some carbon dioxide, and we strip that off and collect it. And since, I think, in the late 80s is when we actually started supplying CO2 for oil recovery to both the facilities in the south and north of us. So it's been going on out there for a long time before that discussion started in the last 10 years here in Alberta. And we also supply lime sludge from our water treatment processes for local lands in the area, though. So we use it as a potential benefit to some land instead of having it as a waste stream. Okay. So here's to talk a little bit about water. That photo actually is looking south. And that's where our intake structure is on the Red Deer River, so it's directly south of where we're located down at the river. We have multiple licenses for water use, so during each expansion we would apply for the additional water use that's required under the Water Act. And altogether our maximum license diversion from the river is 22.8 million meters cubed per year. This is about 4.5% of minimum river flow, which is actually the in-stream minimum river flow. I think that was based on average flows, it's about 1%. Our current site requirements, if we were at full production in all our ethylene plants, would be about 60% of our licensed capacity, so we've used a lot less than what was initially estimated when they first applied. Our expansion required an increase of approximately 10% of average water usage. So percentage of volume that we return to the Red Deer River after treatment is anywhere from 12 to 13.5% of withdrawal. So you're wondering what happens to the rest of that water. In our process, it's mostly used for cooling. So I'm sure you've driven by and seen some of our plumes. It's all water vapor, so it is released back into the environment, but as water vapor instead of directly to the river. So you'll see Stettler might benefit for some of the water vapor that we release. Our surface runoff, so on our site we collect all the surface runoff into ponds and we recycle as much of that as possible, and it's about approximately 5% of the total water that we use for our cooling. And as I said before, we maximize the possible recycling of surface water, and that will continue with our expansion. So this is a simple view of our site water balance. We take water in from the river. We have a couple ponds at the river to stabilize the flow that we're pumping, and it goes either to one of our clarifiers or to our potable water treatment system. So in the clarifiers, they're like, you would have softeners in your house. That's basically the clarifiers are used to soften the water for our cooling water purposes. Or it's used to further clarify our demineralization water system, and that's used to generate steam for our processes. So in our potable water system, that's used, obviously we have a mix of contractors and employees on site of about 1,000 people, so we supply all the potable needs for our site, and it is licensed to the same standard as any municipal water supplies, and they're required to meet Canadian drinking water standards. And we're actually upgrading our facilities currently with membrane microfiltration and UV disinfection. And so that potable water, then we have domestic water distribution, and we have a domestic wastewater treatment plant with filtering, a rotating biological contactor, and then it goes into our phosphate removal system. And also our cooling water blowdown all goes into our phosphate removal system. And once that's treated there, it goes into one of 4 effluent ponds, and then it's batch discharged to the river after a bunch of testing. So in this photo, the 4 in the middle are our batch effluent ponds. The other ones on the side are retention ponds, some firewater ponds, and then some lime sludge and phosphorus ponds from our treatment processes. Every pond is discharged. It's monitored before discharge for the following parameters under our operating approval. And these ones do have limits before we can discharge those, and that's total organic carbon, total suspended solids, total phosphorus, acute lethality test using rainbow trout, and pH. And then we also monitor for a bunch of other parameters that don't have specific criteria, but we report these monthly, or in the case of the last bullet there, we report quarterly. So it'd be flow, oil and grease, chemical oxygen demand, biochemical oxygen demand, total dissolved solids, total phenolics, dissolved metals, 96-hour multiple concentration acute lethality test, 48-hour static acute lethality test, and chronic toxicity testing. So having said that, we have a lot of data, and as part of our expansion case, we did do a water balance. We hired Santac Consulting to look at all our water quality data, look at our flow data, create a water balance for us, and then show how much increase the expansion would have on that water balance. And it's about a 9% increase, and that's mainly due to cooling water, additional cooling water blowdown, and some water due to treatment processes. And in that study, they're able to predict using real historical data and then real data from Alberta Environment for river concentrations. And it was found that there'd be no adverse effects predicted to aquatic life downstream of notochemicals outfall. There'd be no exceedances of chronic water quality guidelines under worst case conditions, which are low Red Deer River flow, peak effluent concentrations. Through benthic environment monitoring, we have shown that there's no toxic effects indicated downstream of our outfall, and none predicted with the expansion. And small predicted increase in nutrient concentrations, but no appreciable change in our effects downstream. And we will continue with a voluntary water quality and benthic invertebrate monitoring study after the project is fully operational to validate those results. And a little bit about water. So when I did read the study for the first time, it's very complicated about the different ways they look at water. So you look at water quality concentrations, effects on aquatic life, effects on benthic invertebrates. So the model that's used is Alberta's model of recognizing a triad approach, which considers chemical specific, whole effluent toxicity, and biological approaches for evaluation of effluent and setting effluent limits. And all those 3 components are expected to maximize the certainty that the environment is protected and addresses aggregate impacts. So we looked at all those things when we did that study. So this is some of our effluent concentration results from 2007 to 2012. This is our total organic carbon and total suspended solids. So you can see there is some seasonality. However, it was back in 2009. Our limits used to be higher in spring, summer months, but they reduced them to a flat limit because we didn't see that we were even approaching those limits, even in the summer months. And this is our 5-year trend of effluent total phosphorus, which our criteria is 1 milligram per liter. And I'll just comment on that peak in 2008 was a 1-day outage of our phosphorus removal system. And in 2010, that was a 1-month outage where our limits were suspended for maintenance of our phosphorus removal system. But you can see through the rest of the years, the phosphorus removal system is actually working quite well. And it was built after the J2000 era, once we had built E3 and PE2.